There are friendships that can never be photographed, and there are truths that survive only in silence. My name is Samuel Hendricks, and for 11 years I maintained a relationship with something that shouldn't exist. A creature I came to call simply boy, though he was neither boy nor dog, but something caught forever between both worlds. This is the story of how a morning routine, leaving food scraps at the edge of a Michigan forest, became a bond that would expose military secrets, challenge our understanding of coexistence, and ultimately cost me everything I'd built over 63 years of life. The truth leaked on November 3, 2023, when a Department of Defense internal memo was posted to a whistleblower site. The document, marked classified compartmented, detailed something called Project Lupine Containment, a decades-long military operation to monitor and manage an anomalous canid population in the forests surrounding Camp Grayling, Michigan's National Guard training facility. My farm was listed by name, so was I, and so was Boy, identified in the memo as Subject L7, juvenile male, estimated age 9-14 years at time of observation. Within 48 hours, my farm was surrounded, not by news crews initially, but by armed military personnel claiming authority under the Defense Production Act and something called the Biological Anomaly Protocols that I'd never heard of, and apparently few civilians have. They cordoned off my property. They established a no-fly zone. They cut my phone lines and internet connection. And then they began asking questions about how long I'd known, what I'd seen, and where Boy had gone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story begins 11 years earlier in the winter of 2012, when I first heard the crying at the edge of my property, a sound that was part wolf howl, part human child, and entirely wrong according to everything I thought I knew about the natural world. I was 52 years old then, a widower running a small dairy operation on 120 acres that bordered the Grayling State Forest. I'd lived there my entire life, inherited the farm from my father, knew every acre of woods and every animal that lived there, or I thought I did. The crying came from the northeast corner, where my pasture met the tree line. It lasted for 3 nights. On the 4th night, I took a flashlight and my rifle and went to investigate. What I found would change everything I believed about what shares this world with us. The first thing I saw was the eyes, amber gold reflecting my flashlight beam from about 30 yards into the trees. Too high off the ground to be a wolf, too large to be a coyote, the wrong color for a deer. I steadied the rifle, finger on the trigger, waiting for whatever it was to move. It whimpered, not a growl, not a threat sound, a whimper, the kind of sound a frightened animal makes, or a lost child. I lowered the rifle slightly and called out, "Hey there, I'm not going to hurt you." The eyes blinked, moved lower as if the creature had crouched or sat down. Then I heard it breathing fast and shallow, the rhythm of panic or pain. I made a decision that probably should have gotten me killed. I set down the rifle, kept the flashlight, and walked slowly into the trees with my hands visible and empty. 20 feet in, I found him. He was curled at the base of a massive oak, and in the flashlight beam I could see why he'd been crying. His left hind leg was caught in a rusted leg hold trap, the kind that had been illegal in Michigan for decades but still turned up occasionally in the deep woods. The leg was swollen, bleeding, and from the smell, already infected. But it was what he was, not what had happened to him, that froze me in place. He was approximately the size of a large dog, maybe 80 pounds, though it was hard to tell with him curled up. His body was covered in thick fur, gray-brown with darker mottling along the spine. His legs were wrong for a dog, too long, with joints that bent in ways that suggested both digitigrade and plantigrade locomotion. His paws had 5 digits, with opposable thumbs that gripped the ground as he shifted position, but it was his face that stopped my heart. The muzzle was elongated like a wolf's, yes, but shorter, more compact. The skull structure was broader, more rounded, and his eyes, those amber gold eyes, were positioned forward, showing binocular vision like a primate, not the lateral placement of a predator. He looked at me with an expression I'd seen 1,000 times in farm dogs: pain, fear, and desperate hope that I might help. "Easy," I said softly. "Easy, boy. Let me see what we've got here." He didn't growl as I approached, didn't bare his teeth. He watched me with those impossible eyes while I examined the trap. It was old, so rusted that the release mechanism was frozen. I'd need tools. "I'm going to get something to open this," I told him, as if he could understand. "Don't move. I'll be right back." I ran to the barn, grabbed bolt cutters and a first aid kit, and was back within 5 minutes. He was still there, still watching, still waiting. That alone told me something crucial. He was intelligent enough to understand that I was trying to help, that leaving meant returning, that I could be trusted. It took 20 minutes to cut through the trap's mechanism. The whole time he never tried to bite, never struggled beyond involuntary flinching when I had to manipulate the injured leg. When the trap finally released, he immediately tried to stand, then collapsed with a yelp. The leg was bad. Bones might be broken. Certainly the tissue was damaged, and infection had definitely set in. This needed more than field treatment. "Come on," I said, not thinking about the impossibility of what I was doing. "Let's get you to the barn." I shouldn't have been able to carry him. 80 pounds of injured, frightened creature with teeth and claws. But when I reached down, he let me. He wrapped his forelegs around my neck in a gesture so human it made me stumble, and I carried him out of the forest like a father carrying a wounded child. In the barn, under bright work lights, I could see him clearly for the first time. He was young, adolescent based on the proportions and the not-quite-adult teeth, male, malnourished based on the visible ribs, and absolutely undeniably impossible. I'd done field veterinary work for years. You don't run a farm without learning animal medicine. I cleaned the wound, applied antibiotic ointment, splinted the leg as best I could, and gave him water mixed with electrolytes. He drank desperately, watching me the entire time with those eerily intelligent eyes. "What are you?" I whispered. He tilted his head, exactly the way a dog does when trying to understand human speech. Then he made a sound, soft and questioning, that was neither bark nor howl, but something in between. I set up a stall for him, lined it with clean hay and left food. Raw chicken from my freezer, some beef scraps, and on impulse, a bowl of oatmeal. In the morning, all of it was gone. He was asleep in the hay, the injured leg stretched out carefully, his breathing steady and deep. That's how it started. A wounded animal, a trap, and a choice to help rather than fear. I told myself I'd release him once he healed. I told myself this was temporary, just until the leg mended and he could survive on his own. I told myself a lot of things that turned out to be lies we tell ourselves when we know we're crossing a line, but aren't ready to admit it. The leg took 6 weeks to heal. By then, Boy, I'd started calling him that because it felt wrong and he responded to the name, had become a fixture in my daily routine. I'd bring food twice a day. He'd eat while I worked nearby, his eyes tracking my movements, learning my patterns. Slowly, over those 6 weeks, fear transformed into familiarity, and familiarity, against all logic and reason, transformed into trust. By spring 2013, Boy had healed enough to leave. The leg had mended well, he walked with only a slight limp, and his strength had returned with proper feeding. I opened the barn door one morning expecting him to bolt into the forest and disappear into whatever impossible life he'd come from. He sat in the doorway, looked at the forest, looked at me, and stayed. That's when I realized this wasn't a temporary arrangement. This was a choice he was making, to remain near me, to accept the food and shelter I offered, to trust that whatever existed between us was worth maintaining. I established rules. Boy would remain in the barn or the forest edge. He wouldn't come near the house. If visitors came, he'd hide. We'd maintain the fiction that I was alone on this farm, that nothing unusual existed in these woods. I was protecting him, I told myself, but I was also protecting myself. Protecting my reputation, my livelihood, my ability to continue this impossible relationship. The next few years developed a rhythm. Boy grew. By 2015, he'd reached full size, approximately 180 pounds, standing nearly 6 feet tall when upright on his hind legs. His proportions had filled out, his features had matured, and his intelligence had become undeniable. He learned to communicate, not with language. He had vocal cords that couldn't form human speech, but he developed a system of gestures, expressions, and vocalizations that conveyed meaning. A specific chuff meant he was hungry. A low whine meant something was wrong in the forest, usually hunters getting too close. A particular head tilt with ears forward meant he'd found something he wanted to show me, and he showed me things, led me to injured animals he'd found, deer with broken legs, raccoons caught in wire snares, once a hawk with a damaged wing. He'd bring me to them and watch as I administered what help I could, as if understanding that I possessed skills for healing that he didn't. He learned my schedule with uncanny precision. He knew when I'd come to the barn for morning chores, when I'd be working in the fields, when I'd make my evening rounds. Sometimes I'd find him waiting at the tree line, sitting patiently in the fading light, just watching me work. I built him a shelter in the forest, just past my property line, a weatherproof structure camouflaged with branches and leaves, stocked with blankets and a water source. He used it, but he always returned to the barn edge by morning, as if checking that I was still there, that our arrangement still held. The first time he brought me a gift, I didn't understand what was happening. I found a deer haunch at the barn door, cleanly butchered, the meat still fresh. At first I thought a neighbor had left it. We had informal arrangements for sharing game meat, but then I saw Boy's tracks in the soft earth, saw the drag marks where he'd pulled the haunch from the forest. He'd hunted, successfully, and he'd brought me a share. I took the meat. Refusing seemed wrong, like rejecting an offered hand. From then on, it became occasional tradition. Every few months I'd find something at the barn door. A rabbit, a turkey, once an entire wild pig. His way of contributing, of maintaining reciprocity in our relationship. But there were rules I had to enforce. When he approached the house one evening, I stopped him firmly. No, the barn is safe. The forest is safe. The house is mine. You understand? He did. He never approached the house again. Visitors were rare, but they happened. When my daughter Emily visited from Detroit, I made sure Boy was deep in the forest. When the feed delivery came, I scheduled it for times when Boy was least active. When county agricultural inspectors did their annual reviews, I kept them focused on the dairy operation, away from the northeast corner where Boy's presence was most evident. It worked for years. I was careful. Boy was cautious. We maintained perfect operational security, but I wasn't the only one watching. In 2018, I noticed changes in the forest. New trail cameras appeared on trees. Not the commercial hunting models, but military-grade equipment with satellite uplinks. Unmarked vehicles occasionally passed on the access road that bordered my property, and helicopter activity increased, especially at night. Military helicopters with searchlights, sweeping patterns across the forest. Something was happening at Camp Grayling. The National Guard facility had always been there, 12 miles north, a presence we'd grown accustomed to. Occasional artillery sounds, training exercises, the distant rumble of heavy vehicles. But the activity was increasing, and it was focused on the forest areas, not the training ranges. I asked around town carefully. Old Jim Patterson at the hardware store said the Guard was doing environmental assessments. Mary Chen at the diner heard it was wildlife monitoring. The official story was vague, bureaucratic, designed to be boring enough that locals wouldn't dig deeper. But I noticed the patterns. Helicopter sweeps increased after I'd fed Boy. Trail cameras appeared near areas where I'd seen his tracks. Once I found a motion sensor buried near the path I used to reach his forest shelter. Carefully camouflaged, but not quite invisible to someone who knew these woods intimately. They were looking for something, and I was terrified they'd found it. I confronted Boy about it one evening. You need to be more careful. Something's happening. There are people looking. He looked at me with those amber eyes and made a sound I'd never heard before. Low, mournful, almost like a question. Then he did something that shattered my heart. He pressed his forehead against my hand, a gesture so gentle and trusting that I understood. He knew. He'd always known there was danger, but he trusted me to protect him anyway. That trust was a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. The military came for answers on a February morning in 2020, though I didn't know it at the time. I was in the barn doing morning chores when I heard the vehicles. 3 of them, military transport trucks pulling up my long driveway with deliberate purpose. 6 soldiers emerged, led by a colonel named Sarah Vance. She was professional, direct, and carrying documentation that made my blood run cold. Mr. Hendricks, I'm Colonel Vance from Camp Grayling. We need to discuss some unusual activity on and around your property. May we come in? It wasn't really a question. I led them to my house, my mind racing through options. Deny everything? Cooperate? Run? In my kitchen, Colonel Vance spread photographs across the table, thermal imaging shots showing a large bipedal figure moving through the forest, trail camera footage of something man-shaped but wrong, moving at the edge of the frame, and one clear image taken from above, probably a drone, of Boy standing at the barn door looking up at the sky. Mr. Hendricks, how long have you been aware of the anomalous entity on your property? The words were clinical, detached. Anomalous entity. Not creature, not animal. Something to be cataloged and contained. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. Colonel Vance didn't blink. We've been monitoring this area for 15 years. We know there's a population of unusual canids in this forest. We know you've been in contact with at least one individual. We have footage of you leaving food, administering medical care, and engaging in regular interaction." She paused. "We're not here to arrest you, Mr. Hendricks. We're here to understand the nature of your relationship with Subject L7. Subject L7. They'd numbered him, cataloged him, made him a file in some classified database. Why now? I asked. If you've known for 15 years, why come to me now? Because Subject L7 is showing unprecedented behavioral patterns. In our observations of this species, they avoid human contact absolutely. They're nocturnal, cryptic, essentially invisible to civilian populations. Subject L7 is the only documented case of sustained voluntary proximity to a human. We need to understand why. One of the other soldiers, introduced as Dr. Marcus Webb, a wildlife biologist, leaned forward. "Mr. Hendricks, this isn't a one-way interrogation. We want to share information. You've had 11 years of close observation. We've had 15 years of distant monitoring. Between us, we might actually understand what these creatures are." It was the word creatures, plural, that caught me. "There are others?" Colonel Vance and Dr. Webb exchanged glances. "Yes," Vance said carefully. "Camp Grayling was established here partially because of them. Or rather, it was expanded in 2005 when we confirmed their presence. Our mission includes training, yes, but also containment and study of what we're calling the lupine anomaly." "How many?" "We've identified approximately 30 individuals across a 40-mile range," Webb said. "They exist in small family groups, rarely more than 5 or 6 together. They're extraordinarily elusive. In 15 years, we've never successfully captured one for study. The closest we've come to extended observation is your relationship with Subject L7. Boy," I said. "His name is Boy." Webb smiled sadly. "You named it. Of course you did. Over the next 4 hours, they showed me everything. Decades of blurry footage, thermal images, track castings, and incident reports dating back to the 1970s, long before Camp Grayling officially acknowledged them. They were real, they were numerous, and they were smart enough to have avoided human contact almost entirely for generations. Except Boy. Boy had chosen differently. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. "Cooperation," Colonel Vance said. "Continue your relationship with Subject L7, but report to us. Document interactions, behaviors, communication attempts. Help us understand what they are, what they need, whether they pose a threat. And if I refuse, then we're legally obligated to seize your property under the biological anomaly protocols, relocate you, and pursue Subject L7 independently." She softened slightly. "Mr. Hendricks, we're not monsters. We don't want to capture or harm these beings, but we have a responsibility to monitor them, to assess potential risks, and to prevent public exposure that could lead to panic or exploitation. You want me to spy on him? We want you to help us protect him," Webb corrected, "and protect the others, because the alternative is that sooner or later someone else discovers them. Hunters, researchers, media. And when that happens, these creatures become either targets or attractions. We're trying to prevent that." I thought about Boy waiting at the barn, about the trust he'd placed in me, about the choice before me: betray him to protect him, or refuse and lose any ability to protect him at all. "I need guarantees," I said. "No capture attempts, no invasive monitoring. You observe from distance only, and if he's ever in danger, you help him, not contain him." Colonel Vance considered this. "We can agree to limited intervention protocols and prioritization of subject welfare, but if there's an incident, if someone gets hurt, if there's a public exposure event, all agreements are void." It wasn't enough, but it was something. "I'll think about it," I said. They left, taking their photographs but leaving a contact number. From my porch, I watched them drive away, then walked to the barn. Boy was there, hiding in the loft but visible to someone who knew where to look. His eyes met mine, and I saw the question in them. "I don't know," I told him honestly. "I don't know what to do." He climbed down from the loft, a fluid motion using hands and feet, more ape than wolf, and approached me. Then he did something he'd never done before. He placed his hand paw on my shoulder, gripped gently, and made a soft, rumbling sound. Reassurance, or perhaps forgiveness in advance, for whatever choice I was about to make. I made my decision that night. I called Colonel Vance. "I'll cooperate, but on my terms, and the moment you break faith, the moment you treat him as a specimen instead of a being." I stopped talking. "Agreed," she said. "Welcome to Project Lupine. I just made a deal with the devil to protect an angel." I could only hope it was the right choice. The cooperation began subtly. Colonel Vance assigned Dr. Webb as my primary contact. A deliberate choice, I realized, because his manner was gentle, curious rather than authoritative. We met weekly at my farm, usually in the early evening when Boy was most active. Webb brought equipment, recording devices for vocalizations, motion cameras I could place in the barn, journals for detailed behavioral notes. But he also brought respect. He never pushed to meet Boy directly, never suggested capture or containment. He wanted to understand, and his questions reflected genuine scientific curiosity rather than military pragmatism. "Does he understand human speech?" Webb asked during our third session. "He understands tone and intent," I replied. "Individual words, I'm not sure. But if I say stay or careful in a certain tone, he responds appropriately." "Tool use?" "He can open gates, manipulate simple latches. Once I saw him use a stick to reach something on a high shelf in the barn. He's more capable than any dog, but less sophisticated than a chimpanzee." "Social needs? Does he seem lonely?" That question stopped me. I'd been so focused on the practical aspects, feeding, shelter, safety, that I hadn't considered Boy's emotional life. Was he lonely? Separated from his kind? Spending his time with a human who couldn't truly communicate with him? "I don't know," I admitted. "He seems content, but how would I tell if he wasn't?" Webb nodded thoughtfully. "We've observed the family groups. They're highly social. Adults maintain close physical contact. Juveniles play together. There's clear communication and cooperation. Subject L7, Boy, is living an isolated existence. That might not be healthy for his species." The guilt hit immediately. In trying to protect Boy, had I trapped him in loneliness? "Are you saying I should release him? Let him find his own kind?" "I'm saying we need to consider what's best for him, not just what's safest," Webb replied. "But there's a complication. We don't know if he'd be accepted by the other groups. He smells like you now, like human, like the farm. He's been habituated to human presence. There's a real possibility they'd reject him, or worse, perceive him as a threat. A threat. Because of me. Because I'd saved him from a trap and created a different kind of cage." The weekly meetings continued through 2020 and into 2021. I documented everything. Boy's daily patterns, his food preferences, his reactions to weather and seasons, his clear joy when I arrived at the barn, tail wagging, a specific welcoming vocalization, his visible distress when I was late or absent. But I also began noticing changes. Military activity around the property increased. More cameras appeared in the forest, not just on my land, but throughout the surrounding state forest. Helicopter flights became routine, and the perimeter of Camp Grayling expanded, with new fencing that pushed closer to civilian properties. "You're building a containment zone," I said to Webb one evening. He didn't deny it. "There's been pressure from higher command, some incidents, a hiker who saw something, a hunter who reported tracks, a researcher who started asking questions about anomalous canid DNA in the regional database. The brass wants tighter control." "Control? You mean you want to capture them?" "Some people want that, yes. I'm fighting against it. Colonel Vance is fighting against it, but we're not the only voices in the decision chain." He looked uncomfortable. "Sam, there's something you should know. There's another faction, Defense Intelligence, working with some private biotech contractors. They're interested in the lupine population for different reasons." "What reasons?" "Genetic research. The musculoskeletal system of these beings is remarkable. Strength-to-weight ratio that shouldn't be possible. Regenerative capabilities we don't fully understand. There are people who see military applications." I felt cold. "You want to weaponize them." "I don't, but others do. And they're looking for any excuse to reclassify this project from wildlife management to strategic asset acquisition." That night I sat with Boy in the barn. He leaned against me, something he'd started doing in recent months, a gesture of trust and affection that still amazed me. I scratched behind his ears, and he made a low, contented rumbling sound. "They want to use you," I told him. "Study you. Take pieces of you. Figure out how to make soldiers stronger or heal faster. You're not a person to them. You're a resource." He looked at me with those intelligent amber eyes, and I wondered what he understood. Could he sense the danger? Did he know that our arrangement was becoming untenable? The crisis came in August 2021. Webb arrived unscheduled, his expression grim. "We have a problem. A hunter wounded one of the others, an adult female, shot her in the shoulder about 8 miles north of here. She escaped, but she's injured and likely to seek shelter or help." If she comes near civilian areas, if someone else sees her, this whole operation goes public. Higher command is authorizing a capture operation. Capture? With what? Tranquilizers? Nets? Lethal force is authorized if the subject poses a threat to civilians. The words hung in the air between us. They were ready to kill one of Boy's kind to maintain secrecy. I want to help her, I said. I've treated injured animals before. If she needs medical attention, Sam, she's not habituated like Boy. She'll be terrified, aggressive, unpredictable. And if you're seen helping her, if there's any public exposure, they'll shut down everything. This farm, your protection of Boy, all of it. So what? I just let her die to maintain operational security? Webb was quiet for a long moment. No, you help her if you can. I'll run interference with the capture teams, buy you time. But Sam, understand, we're running out of time anyway. The pressure to escalate containment is growing. Something's going to break, and soon. That night I heard howling from the north. Not Boy's voice, something deeper, adult, female, and filled with pain. She was coming, and I had to choose between protecting Boy's secret and helping one of his kind. There was no good choice. There never had been. She arrived just before dawn, collapsing at the tree line 30 yards from the barn. I saw her through the window. Larger than Boy, maybe 220 pounds, her shoulder matted with blood. She was trying to stay standing but failing, her legs giving out, her breathing labored. Boy saw her too. He went rigid, every muscle tense, then made a sound I'd never heard, a complex vocalization that was part howl, part bark, part something else entirely. Communication, recognition. He knew her. Before I could react, Boy was out the barn door, moving faster than I'd ever seen him move, crossing the space to her in seconds. He didn't approach her directly. Instead, he circled, making soft vocalizations, submissive gestures. She watched him with pain-glazed eyes, breathing hard, and then did something that confirmed what I'd suspected. She responded. The same vocalizations, the same gestures, language. They were speaking. I approached slowly, carrying my medical kit, my hands visible. The female tensed, lips pulling back from teeth that could tear me apart in seconds. But Boy moved between us, positioning himself deliberately, making sounds that were clearly communicative. He was vouching for me, explaining me to her. She didn't relax, but she didn't attack either. I took that as permission. The wound was bad. A rifle bullet had passed through her shoulder, missing major arteries but shattering part of the scapula. Infection was already setting in. The smell was unmistakable. She needed antibiotics, wound cleaning, possibly surgery to remove bone fragments. This was beyond field treatment. I need to take her to the barn, I told Boy as if he could understand the full meaning. She needs help I can't give her out here. Boy looked at me, then at her, then made a decision. He moved to her side, supporting her weight, helping her stand. Together, impossibly beautifully, he guided her toward the barn. She leaned on him, trusting him in a way she'd never trust a human. In the barn, under bright lights, I worked for 3 hours, cleaning the wound, removing bone fragments, administering antibiotics and pain medication. She was conscious throughout, watching me with those same amber eyes, never making a sound except when I had to manipulate the broken bone. Then she'd growl, low, controlled, a warning but not a threat. Boy stayed beside her the entire time, one paw hand resting on her uninjured shoulder, making soft vocalizations, comfort sounds, reassurance. When I finished, she was exhausted, feverish, but stable. I set up a second stall with clean hay, water, and food. Boy helped her to it. Again, that impossible cooperation, and she collapsed into the hay with what could only be called relief. I called Webb. I have her. She's injured but stable. Tell your teams to stand down. Sam, they're already mobilizing. Colonel Vance is trying to delay them, but higher command wants immediate containment. You have maybe 6 hours before they're at your door. Then you have 6 hours to convince them that lethal force is unnecessary. She's not a threat. She's injured and receiving treatment. Tell them that. They don't care about treatment, they care about control. After Webb hung up, I sat in the barn watching Boy and the female. They'd positioned themselves so they could see each other. Her in her stall, him in his. They were still communicating. Soft vocalizations back and forth. A conversation I couldn't begin to understand. And I realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. Boy hadn't stayed with me because he was alone. He'd stayed because I was the only safe point of contact with the human world, and his kind needed that. Needed someone who could help when they were injured, when they were trapped, when the human expansion into their territory created dangers they couldn't navigate alone. He hadn't chosen me. I'd been chosen. Selected, tested, and ultimately trusted with a role I'd never understood. I'd been made their veterinarian, their emergency contact, their bridge between worlds. The weight of that realization was crushing. Webb arrived 2 hours later, before the capture teams. He examined the female from a distance, took photographs, documented her injuries. "This is incredible," he said quietly. "She's allowing you to treat her because of him, because he's established you as safe." "They're using me," I said. "Boy's been using me all along." "No, he's been trusting you. There's a difference." Webb looked at Boy, who was watching us warily. "He took an enormous risk bringing her here. If you'd reacted with fear, if you'd called authorities, if you'd done anything to break his trust, it would have endangered his entire species. He gambled that you'd choose compassion over protocol. What happens now? Now I document that the injured subject is receiving treatment, is not a threat, and is being monitored by a cooperative civilian asset. You. That buys us time. Maybe days, maybe weeks. But Sam, you need to understand. This can't continue indefinitely. Eventually, someone higher up the chain is going to demand direct access." The female recovered over the next 2 weeks. Boy tended to her constantly, bringing her food, cleaning her wound with careful licks that kept infection at bay, lying near her stall when she slept. Their communication grew more complex, and I began to understand fragments of it. Certain vocalizations meant danger, others meant safe, others meant food or water or pain. They had language, not human language, but language nonetheless, complete with grammar, nuance, and the ability to communicate abstract concepts. On the 14th day, she was strong enough to leave. I opened the barn door at dusk. She stood, tested her weight on the injured leg, then looked at me for a long moment. She didn't make a gesture of thanks. That would be anthropomorphizing. But she made a sound, low, specific, and clearly directed at me. Then she looked at Boy, made a different sound, and walked into the forest. Boy didn't follow. He watched her go, then turned back to me. He'd made his choice again. To stay, to maintain this impossible bridge between our worlds. And I understood. This was no longer about me protecting him. This was about him protecting them, his entire species, by maintaining the one safe contact point they had with humanity. I was never the keeper. I was the one being kept. The memo leaked 3 weeks later on November 3, 2023. Someone within the Defense Department, a whistleblower whose identity remains unknown, posted 73 pages of classified documents to a public website. Project Lupine Containment was just one of several programs exposed, but it was the one that captured immediate public attention. By noon, the documents had been downloaded 2 million times. By evening, every major news network was running stories. Pentagon admits to monitoring unknown species. Dogman real, says classified military project. Government hid cryptid population for decades. The documents included everything: population estimates, range maps, behavioral analyses, thermal imaging photos, and, catastrophically, a list of civilian assets that included my name, my address, and a description of my 11-year relationship with Subject L7. My phone started ringing at 2 p.m. and didn't stop. News crews, researchers, cryptozoology enthusiasts, curiosity seekers. By sunset, there were 14 vehicles parked along my access road. By morning, there were 50. The military arrived within 12 hours of the leak, but not to contain the information. That was already impossible. They came to contain the situation. A full platoon established a perimeter around my property, declaring it a biological security zone, under authority I didn't recognize but couldn't challenge. They cut off all access. The news crews were pushed back a mile. Helicopters were grounded under FAA no-fly orders. Colonel Vance appeared at my door with Dr. Webb and a new face, a 2-star general named Patricia Hawkins, who looked like she wanted to have someone shot, possibly me. "Mr. Hendricks," General Hawkins said without preamble, "you are now at the center of the largest security breach in Defense Department history. The existence of Project Lupine is public. The location of the primary study population is public. Your relationship with Subject L7 is public. We have approximately 48 hours before this property is overrun by every media outlet, research institution, and curious civilian in North America. I need to know, where is Subject L7 now?" "The barn," I said, "where he always is." We need to relocate him. Immediately. There's a secure facility in Nevada where he can be protected, studied properly, kept safe from public exposure. You mean captured and caged? I mean protected from a mob that's coming whether we like it or not. She wasn't wrong. Through my window I could see the growing crowd at the perimeter. News vans with satellite uplinks, people with cameras, a group holding signs that said "Free the Dogman" and "Cryptid Rights Now." The circus had arrived. Dr. Webb spoke quietly. "Sam, she's right about the danger. But Nevada isn't the answer. A cage isn't protection. It's just a different kind of trap." He turned to General Hawkins. "There's another option. We know from the documents that there are multiple family groups. Let Subject L7 rejoin them. Deep in the forest, away from roads and access points. He survives, the population remains protected, and the public doesn't get their live specimen. And give up the only habituated subject we have?" Hawkins shook her head. "He's a scientific asset of incalculable value. He's a being with the right to choose his own fate," Webb countered. The argument escalated, but I stopped listening. Because through the window, I saw movement at the perimeter fence. Someone had cut through, was running toward the barn with a camera. Then another person. Then 3 more. The perimeter was failing. "They're coming," I said. Hawkins cursed and barked orders into her radio. Soldiers moved to intercept the trespassers, but more were following. The crowd had realized the fence could be breached. I ran to the barn. Boy was there, agitated, sensing the chaos. The noise, the helicopters overhead, the crowd. It was everything he'd spent 11 years avoiding. "You need to go," I told him. "Now. Into the forest. Find the others. This place isn't safe anymore." He looked at me, then at the barn doors, then back at me, hesitating. This was his home. I was his family. Leaving meant abandoning both. "Go!" I shouted, pushing him toward the back door that opened to the forest. "I'll be fine, but you need to go now." He made a sound, anguished, questioning, asking why. "Because I can't protect you from this," I said, and my voice broke. "Because there are too many of them, and they'll never leave you alone. Because you need to be wild, boy, you need to be free." Behind me I heard shouting. The first trespassers had reached the barn. Cameras, phones, people calling out, "Where is it? Where's the Dogman?" Boy made his decision. He touched my hand once with his paw, gentle, deliberate, then turned and ran into the forest. I watched him disappear into the trees, his gray-brown fur blending perfectly with the shadows, and felt something tear in my chest. The trespassers burst into the barn seconds later, cameras raised, expecting to find a monster. They found an old man standing in an empty stall, crying. "He's gone," I said. "You scared him away." The footage of that moment, my grief, their disappointment, was uploaded within minutes. It went viral. The old farmer who'd befriended a cryptid, now abandoned and heartbroken. Public opinion, fickle as always, shifted. I became simultaneously a hero and a fool, someone to be admired and pitied. But I didn't care about public opinion. I cared that Boy was out there somewhere, alone, trying to find his kind after 11 years of living between worlds. I'd saved him from a trap only to lead him to a different kind of captivity. And now I'd released him into a world that knew he existed, that would hunt him, study him, never leave him alone. The covenant I'd maintained for 11 years was broken. The secret I'd kept was exposed. The trust I'd been given was betrayed, not by my choice, but by forces neither of us could control. And the worst part was knowing that no matter how it had ended, there was never a path that led to Boy being truly safe. The moment I'd carried him out of those woods, I'd changed his fate forever. For 3 months, the farm was effectively a military installation. Armed perimeter, surveillance equipment, restricted access. General Hawkins established a command center in my barn. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me, and coordinated a search operation that deployed over 200 personnel across the Grayling State Forest. They found nothing. No tracks, no thermal signatures, no trace of Boy or any of the lupine population. The forest had swallowed them completely. "It's like they vanished," Dr. Webb told me during one of his visits. He still came by, ostensibly for consultations, but really to check on me. "Every camera we've deployed goes dark when they approach. Every tracking method we try fails. They know they're being hunted, and they've adapted." "Good," I said. "Sam, I understand you're angry." "Angry? Marcus, I'm devastated. I had 11 years with Boy. I learned how to communicate with him, how to care for him, how to be his friend. And in one day, it was all destroyed. Not by my choice, not by his, by some bureaucrat's leaked memo and a public that treats him like entertainment. Webb was quiet. Then, the female you treated, she survived. We found evidence of her in a den site 40 miles north. She's with a family group now, apparently integrated successfully. That gave me a small measure of comfort. At least my intervention had saved one of them. In January 2024, the military presence decreased. General Hawkins moved on to other crises. The media found newer stories. The crowds dissipated. My farm was returned to me, though the damage was permanent. My barn had been converted to a surveillance station, my fields trampled by foot traffic, my privacy demolished. But I stayed. Where else would I go? And more importantly, what if Boy came back? He didn't. January passed. February, March. The forest remained silent. In April, I received a visitor. Not military, not media, but a woman in her 60s who introduced herself as Dr. Elena Voss. The name meant nothing to me until she explained. She'd had a similar experience in Washington state, protecting a family of beings she called the Stillwater population, what the world knew as Bigfoot. I read about your situation, she said over coffee in my kitchen. I wanted to meet someone else who'd carried that weight. How did yours end? I destroyed all the evidence, burned 70 years of records, erased their existence from human documentation. Then I lost everything. My practice, my reputation, my home. She smiled sadly. But they survived. That was worth the cost. Do you regret it? Every day. And not at all. Both things are true. We talked for hours, comparing experiences, sharing the burden that only someone who'd lived it could understand. The isolation, the secrecy, the weight of being trusted with something impossible, the knowledge that no choice was right, that protection and exposure both led to harm. What do you think happened to him? She asked about Boy. I think he found his kind. I think he's out there somewhere, teaching them what he learned from me, which humans to avoid, which technologies to fear, how to stay hidden in a world that wants to find them. You made him a better survivor. I made him a refugee from his own home. She reached across the table and took my hand. Samuel, listen to me. What happened wasn't your fault. You gave him 11 years of safety. You healed him when he was injured. You established trust between species that should be natural enemies. The leak, the exposure, the military response, none of that was your doing. But it was my responsibility. I was supposed to protect him. You did protect him. And then you did the hardest thing possible. You let him go. That's not failure, Sam. That's love. After she left, I sat on my porch watching the tree line. I'd started doing that every evening, watching for movement, hoping against reason that I'd see a familiar gray-brown shape emerge from the shadows. The confrontation came in May, not from Boy, but from what I can only call an emissary. I woke one morning to find an arrangement at the barn door, stones stacked in a specific pattern similar to what Boy used to make. Next to it was a deer haunch, freshly killed, the meat cleanly butchered. My heart hammered. I walked to the tree line. Boy, are you there? No response, but I felt watched. For 3 nights, offerings appeared. Meat, arranged stones, once a bundle of useful plants, messages, communications. They were telling me, we're here, we remember, we're okay. On the 4th night, I saw her, the female I'd treated watching from the trees. She stepped into the clearing, limping slightly from the old shoulder injury but alive and healthy. She looked at me for a long moment, made a specific vocalization, the one that meant safe, then turned and melted back into the forest. She'd come to tell me they'd survived. That Boy was with them, that the family was intact. It was the closure I'd needed, and the goodbye I could bear. I stopped watching the tree line after that, not because I'd given up hope, but because I understood. Boy wasn't coming back. He didn't need to. He'd fulfilled his purpose. He'd established me as safe, had used me to help his kind, had learned what he needed to learn. Now he was where he belonged, with his own kind, living wild. I'd been his bridge to the human world, but bridges are meant to be crossed and left behind, not lived on forever. In June, I began giving interviews, carefully controlled, saying very little. I confirmed Boy's existence, confirmed the relationship, but refused to provide details that could help anyone find him. I became the public face of the lupine incident, the human who'd befriended the impossible. Some called me a hero, some called me a fool, some called me a traitor for keeping the secret so long. I didn't care what they called me. I knew what I was. Someone who'd been given an extraordinary gift. 11 years with a being that shouldn't exist, and who'd lost it not through failure, but through the impossibility of keeping such secrets in the modern world. The farm is quiet now. It's been 18 months since the leak, since Boy disappeared into the forest, since my life became public property. The military scaled back operations after 6 months of failed searches, leaving just a few trail cameras and occasional aerial surveys. The media moved on to newer mysteries. The protesters and curiosity seekers found other causes. I'm alone again, the way I was before that winter night in 2012 when I first heard crying at the edge of my property. Except I'm not alone. Not really. Because I know what's out there in the forest. I know they're watching, surviving, adapting to a world that now knows they exist but can't prove it without my cooperation. The military still calls occasionally. General Hawkins retired, but her replacement, Colonel James Morrison, checks in monthly. Any signs of Subject L7? He asks. No, I always answer, which is technically true. I haven't seen Boy, but the offerings appear every few weeks. Meet at the barn door, stones arranged in patterns, signs that they remember and appreciate what I did. Morrison knows I'm lying by omission, but he also knows I won't give them anything useful. The detente holds because forcing my cooperation would be politically catastrophic now. I'm the sympathetic farmer who befriended a cryptid. Public opinion protects me more than any law could. Dr. Webb visits every few months. We've become genuine friends, bonded by shared experience and complicated ethics. He left military service and now works for a conservation organization, trying to establish unofficial protected zones in forests where the lupine population likely exists. We can't protect them officially, he told me last month, but we can make sure logging permits get denied, that development gets redirected, that hunting regulations get quietly enforced. Bureaucratic protection through obstruction. Is it working? We haven't lost any more to hunters. That's something. Tyler, you remember Tyler from Dr. Voss's story, contacted me in March 2025. He's building a legal framework for non-human intelligent beings, using both the lupine incident and the Stillwater case as precedent. He wants my testimony for a case he's building about rights for beings that exist in legal gray areas. If we can establish that intelligence, not humanity, determines personhood, we can protect them through law, he explained passionately. Tyler, they don't want legal protection. They want to be left alone, which is a choice only persons can make, not wildlife. That's my point. He's right in a way, but I remember the weight of Boy's paw on my shoulder, the trust in those amber eyes. What he wanted wasn't legal status. It was safety, food, shelter, and someone who didn't treat him like a specimen or a threat. He wanted what we all want, to be seen, accepted, and allowed to exist on his own terms. My daughter Emily visited last month, her first time back since the leak. She stood at the barn door looking at the forest and asked, "Do you miss him?" Every day. Was it worth it? All of this, the publicity, the investigations, losing your privacy. I thought about 11 years of morning routines, of Boy waiting at the barn, of quiet companionship with a being that shouldn't exist. I thought about the injured female I'd helped, about the offering still appearing at my door, about the knowledge that somewhere in those woods, they're surviving because I was careful, because I protected them as long as I could. Yes, I said, it was worth it. Last week I found something new at the barn door. Not meat, not stones, but a small carved object. Rough but deliberate, shaped from a piece of cedar. It took me a moment to recognize what it was. A human figure, crude but clearly intentional. 2 legs, 2 arms, a head. Me. Boy had carved me. I sat on the barn step holding that carving and cried for the first time since he left. Because it meant he remembered. It meant those 11 years had mattered to him too. It meant I wasn't just a food source or a curiosity, but something more. I was his friend, and he'd wanted me to know that. I keep the carving on my kitchen table now, next to the photograph of my late wife. 2 beings I loved, both gone, both living in memory, and the marks they left on my life. The forest still holds its secrets. The lupine population still exists, still hides, still adapts. They've learned from their exposure. They're more cautious now, more sophisticated in avoiding detection. The cameras capture nothing. The thermal scans show only normal wildlife. They've become perfectly invisible again. But I know they're there, and they know I'm here. Sometimes in the evening I hear howling from deep in the forest, complex vocalizations that might be communication or might be songs. I like to think Boy is out there, teaching the young ones, telling them about the human who helped him, warning them about the dangers, but also about the possibility that not all humans are threats. Maybe he's become what I was, a bridge, the one who knows both worlds, who can navigate between them, who carries the memory of trust even after trust was broken. People still ask me what Boy was. Was he a missing link? An undiscovered species? A remnant population of some extinct hominid? I tell them I don't know, which is true. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a farmer who found an injured creature in a trap and chose compassion over fear. But here's what I do know. Intelligence exists in forms we haven't cataloged. Consciousness doesn't require human features. And some relationships transcend species, language, and every boundary we think divides us from the wild.